Karen Reed, cop killer, our cop boyfriend. Today's episode is episode number 3, and today we're going to talk about some things we did not expect to come out in the Karen Reed trial. This and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Yep, it's what some people are calling, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. Charlie Crimebuster, charliecrimebuster.com, and peacemakernetwork.com are copyrights owned by Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to the Charlie Crime Train today. Glad to have you on board. We're going to have a very enjoyable ride. At the same time, we hope informative. Thank you for being a part of the Charlie Crime family. Hey, by the way, if you'd like to reach out with a shout out, you can reach me, charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. Reach out with a shout out. If you're a brand new listener, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you're a seasoned listener, we'd love to hear from you as well. That's charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. Hey, you can make suggestions, maybe something you would like for us to cover in the Karen Reed trial, or maybe something else you'd like to see us cover in the future. You can ask questions if you need clarification. And, as we say here, you can lodge objections. In other words, you can disagree. It is a safe zone. We'd love to hear from you either way. charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. If you'd like to be a part of supporting the program, just jump right over there to peacemakernetwork.com. peacemakernetwork.com. You'll see how we are supporting the brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from danger. Yep, we're talking about law enforcement, first responders, and the military. A lot of brave people out there deserve some recognition, don't you think? Well, you can be a part of recognizing them. You can also support the program by becoming a badge, BADGE supporter, for as little as $3 a month. Jump over there to peacemakernetwork.com. And as we always say, if you'd like to hear more episodes of other crime, true crime, reality cases, we'd invite you to go to charliecrimebuster.com. There you're going to find hundreds of episodes, and you can immerse yourself, find out that really tickles your mystery innards. Mystery innards, that's a new one, isn't it? And just kind of click on there and just go ahead and open you up a case. We got several of them there at charliecrimebuster.com. All right, now that we got a little housekeeping out of the way. Oh, boy, I better remember to tell you this, though. James would get after me if I didn't. That's our producer. James and I, we talk every single week about the episode that we drop, usually on Sunday or Monday. And after you hear that episode, you can join us in the middle of the week, and you can hear James and I talk about it. We actually reveal some new stuff in those talks often, and it gives us a little more time to get involved in some of the things we cover. So go to the YouTube, just go to youtube.com/charliecrimebuster. All right, now I believe our housekeeping's out of the way. Let's get right down to the nitty-gritty, as we say, as we're talking today about, some things we did not expect that came up in the first trial of Karen Reed. Well, now, some of you, right off the bat, you might think, one thing that people didn't expect was a mistrial. Well, actually a mistrial, don't you think it really is possible in most cases? I think we saw a great example in one of the other trials we covered, the Russ murder trial. That was with Alec Baldwin. That one became a mistrial because of prosecution misconduct. And I guess maybe, in all probability, some people may have expected a hung jury with this one as well. In light of the high publicity and a lot of the problems that were coming out on the media of the case, some people may have thought that would have been a mistrial. There were other people who thought that it would be a not guilty, and there were some that thought it would be guilty. It ended up being a mistrial. But now the 3 items that I'm going to cover in today's case, though, more and likely, and at least for me, It is 3 things I did not expect. And these 3 things, these 3 items, actually are 3 people. We're actually going to introduce you to 3 people. And all of them, you're going to like this, they're going to have nicknames. Makes it very easy to remember that way. And the 3 are Turtleboy, Crash Daddy, and Bad Cop. I bet you can easily remember those 3, right? Turtleboy, Crash Daddy, Bad Cop. Well, let's get right into it. Boy, I tell you, if you were following the trial, you notice as people were coming into the courthouse, there were hundreds of voices. It seemed like hundreds of voices. I don't know how many, but they were loud. And they were all chanting, "Free Karen Reed! Free Karen Reed!" And in fact, one of the commentators said that he never in his life, had he ever heard people cheering for someone who had been accused of being a cop killer. Yet, day after day, you could hear those supporters, "Free Karen Reed! Free Karen Reed!" Well, my friend, that group got together basically with a push and support from a guy by the name of Aidan Carney. Aidan Carney. You see, he has led the charge against police corruption, and he is actually alleging that there is a cover-up with police there in the Karen Reed case. Now, you recall, don't you, Karen Reed, she was a professor and a financial advisor. Her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, he was a Boston cop. Well, Karen and John, they went out bar hopping one night. Then they went over to another cop's house, a guy by the name of Sergeant Brian Albert, with the Boston Police Department as well. Now, according to Karen, she dropped him off there and went home because she was not feeling well. But then the mystery begins. The next day, John O'Keefe's body, or his life actually, he was alive, and he was found lying in the snow the next morning, 2 black eyes, blood all around him, only to be transported to the hospital, and there he actually died, passed away because of the injuries. And the prosecution, they say Karen Reed hit him with a car. The defense says, no, someone's framing Karen Reed, and he was beat up and left out to die in the snow. Now, if you want to get caught up on that, then just go back to charliecrimebuster.com, listen to the last episodes. We'll get you kind of caught up with what is happening. But now, pushing with the turbocharged media for Karen Reed's innocence and alleging a police cover-up is this guy who is known by the nickname Turtleboy, Aidan Carney. Turtleboy! So what do we know about this so-called Turtle Boy? Well, Aidan Carney, he was born in 1981. He's a journalist, a blogger, author, and somebody says a conservative activist. He's also the senior editor of the website and the podcast TB Daily News. TB, Turtleboy Daily News. Now looking a little bit about Carney so we can understand who he is. He's the son of a former attorney. And actually a son to Kevin and Mary. He was raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. He actually attended South High Community School. Graduated around 2000. Hey, actually, Turtleboy coached boys varsity track. Yep. And he even worked as a history teacher. That was until late 2014. Hey, Carney himself tried politics. He also ran for the regional school committee. However, he was not elected. And so as kind of a hobby, Turtleboy, he started a little online blog. At first it was called aidanfromworcester.com. And he posted about a variety of different issues. Then he started an anonymous website called Turtleboy Sports. Actually, he turned that one into a full-time career. So I bet you're kind of thinking like I was thinking, where in the world, and how did he get the nickname Turtleboy? Where did Turtleboy come from? And don't be disappointed. I was a little disappointed because it wasn't really all that big deal where he found the name. I thought something had to happen. But actually, Turtleboy, It's just a nickname for the Burnside Fountain there in Worcester. He actually began using it because one of his students said, "Hey, try this out. Why don't you call it Turtleboy?" You see, the Burnside Fountain, and by the way, it's a non-functioning drinking fountain. It doesn't work. Don't try to go there and get you a drink of water. You'll not do it. It's found there in Worcester, and it actually has two parts. It has a big pink granite basin, and then, get this, a bronze statue. A statue of a turtle and a boy riding on the back of the turtle. Thus, we have Turtleboy. So after he started that publication, Turtleboy, he then began to write investigative articles anonymously under that pen name, Uncle Turtleboy and Clarence Woods Emerson. He actually grew that site, had a whole bunch of other people sending stuff in, all anonymously. But then in 2015, somebody unmasked his identity. Everybody knew Turtleboy was this Aidan Carney. And so he just began to use Turtleboy as his alias in writing. And then he changed the name of the whole publication to TB Daily News, Turtleboy Daily News. Around 2018, he wrote a whole bunch of articles actually about Facebook and Google and about their online censorship. He actually published a book, I Am Turtleboy, Teacher Turned Blogger, Battles Big Tech Censorship, Threats Political Correctness, Protect Free Speech. Even in 2019, the American Civil Liberties Union actually gave him legal defense in a case against a Rhode Island judge who tried to infringe upon his First Amendment rights. And, this idea of misconduct with the police is not new with Turtleboy. Way back in 2018, he actually covered the state police regarding a K-9 trooper's history. This K-9 trooper wasn't a very good guy. He was involved in drug dealing, money laundering. I should say she was. She actually participated in a large-scale marijuana business. That business was ran by the trooper's then live-in boyfriend. You see, that trooper failed to disclose his criminal activity when he applied to the state police. They uncovered it during a testimony on a trial. And all this actually led the state police to begin a new background check on hiring people. All because, again, old Turtleboy was out there reporting it. He was also the first to break news of another state trooper who faced disciplinary actions about incriminating details in an arrest report. But it was in April 2023 when Turtleboy began to cover Karen Reed. And he got so involved in this that he began to organize protests there in Canton in support of Reed. All the pretrial hearings. And then he coined that phrase that you hear people chanting, "Free Karen Reed, free Karen Reed." And I guess we could say that he had a lot to do with this case getting national attention. All because of his involvement. But there was trouble in paradise, because in December 23, he was actually himself arrested. Turtleboy was arrested. They arrested him on 8 counts of witness intimidation. 3 counts of conspiracy to intimidate witnesses, 5 counts of picketing a witness, related all to the Reed case. They let him out on bail, but then, something else happened. He got accused of assaulting a former girlfriend. Then they revoked his bail. And get this, Turtleboy spent 60 days in the lockup. 60 days locked up behind bars. He was released in February of this year, 24. Now, when you asked him about that, he said the girlfriend was just a jilted lover who made up the assault. And after spending 60 days in jail? Interesting thing, my friend. Must not have been too good of a case because they dropped those charges. All gave the appearance that maybe the government was a little concerned about how Turtleboy was, how he was investigating his own investigation of the case. Maybe they tried to shut him up. Now, on one of the indictments, they actually used one of his own podcasts, and they used the part where he kept saying, I will be back, indicating he's just coming back, intimidating witnesses. However, that was not in reference to a real witness. He was talking about the clerk that would not provide him with public records so he could run down the guy that plowed the snow that night. Police didn't run him down. There was a snowplow went by there that night. That guy, by the way, said that he did not see O'Keefe lying in the yard where they said he was lying all night. But he did see a vehicle, Ford Edge, parked next to the driveway. So Turtleboy said that one of the things they got me for was saying, I'm going to be back until you get me the information where I can get the name and interview that snowplow driver myself. Because the police hasn't done it. Somebody ought to. Then there was the accusation they actually went to a soccer game of one of the parents' children and tried to talk to a parent. Say that he's going to houses to lodge protests. Now, a lot of these same tactics, well, they were used back during people were protesting the police, wasn't it? Yet, isn't it amazing they were not arrested for that? Other people were able to go to people's house and protest, and they were not arrested? No, I don't like the tactics of Turtleboy, but I guess we all have to say, is it really criminal? Or was he just using his First Amendment rights? And by the way, I have to say this, Turtleboy, who at first I didn't have a very high opinion of, but he was among 5 nominees to be selected for the Patriots' First Amendment Award. That's the designation that they give to people who made a significant difference in holding public officials accountable. Fighting for transparency in government, going beyond the call of duty to defend, protect the right of free speech, free press, freedom of religion. So he has been awarded for some of his reporting. So now, according to the prosecution and the state, Turtleboy's been a real thorn in their side. And we can see how that would make some enemies by some of the stuff he uncovered. But let me ask you, has he gone too far? Has he gone too far by intimidating witnesses? Did he cross the line into criminal behavior? Or was he just doing his job as a journalist? Well, I'm going to let you decide that for yourself. He says, I'm just trying to get to the truth. I'm asking people questions like any other reporter asks people questions, and they arrested me for that. Well, I'll let you decide that as well, because his case will be coming to trial, and of course, yours truly, we'll keep you posted on what's taking place there. Well, next we're going to talk about somebody else. We're going to introduce you to Crash Daddy. But now, it is time for what we do here at Charlie Crimebuster. We share a crazy crook story to kind of lighten the load. And so here is Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, my friend, this story comes from an affidavit obtained by the Smoking Gun Show, an alleged meth user. Boy, this is getting old, isn't it? Last week, our crazy crook was another meth user, a meth seller, I should say, last week. But now here's a meth user who landed herself behind bars. Oh, hang on to it. Can't make it up. When the lady herself called Indiana police to rat out her drug dealer, telling the cops, well, this batch of meth was not what it was supposed to be. I'm telling you the truth, my friend. Sarah Harris, 34, dialed 911 twice back in January to complain that she was supplied with a bad baggie of meth. Harris then, well, she handed the drugs over to the cops in her home. Yep, just gave them the drugs. City of Bedford. She was hoping they would test the drug. She said the bad meth left her feeling as though she was having a heart attack. Now, she admitted to snorting a line of the substance. She said she felt something different when it touched her skin, the nostrils. She said it wasn't the experience she had signed up for. She compared that to the painful sensation to the bowl of normal meth she smoked with a friend previously. Said it's not the same. Well, this crazy crook, I guess, was willing to admit her own illegal activity if she could get her dealer in trouble. She said, I wanted to turn that person in. Well, for her being honest, well, they did slap her, though, with a meth possession charge. That felony carries a maximum 30-month prison sentence, according to charges that were filed. And by the way, surprise, 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 not the first time Harris had to run in with the cops. She had prior convictions for theft, meth possession again. disorderly conduct, resisting, operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So this meth person who took meth, who was so crazy that she called the popo, showed them her meth, and said it was a bad batch, this lady indeed becomes Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, now back to our main focus. Number 2 person we did not expect to hear from. And I will have to say this one appears to be very impactful in interpreting the evidence. You see, the thing about this one, well, this expert witness that we're going to talk about, he's called Crash Daddy. But get this, he was not paid by the prosecution, nor was he paid by the defense. You see, the prosecution did bring their own accident reconstruction officer. He was a trooper, a state trooper by the name of John Paul, who had been trained in crash deconstructionists. He's the one who said that he thought that Karen Reed had hit John O'Keefe with a car. He testified a data collection system showed it was put in reverse, went for about 20 miles an hour. He said that's when she hit him. But now, here comes another expert. An expert that the defense called themselves. And he's from something called ARCA. It's an engineering firm. Does a whole lot of testings from a scientific standpoint. Hey, they work for all kinds of insurance companies, all kinds of government places, and also even work for the Department of Defense, helping them to build those Humvees out there that could better sustain IEDs. They also even work to help protect hockey players. So all their work in a scientific way is investigating impacts, crashes, vehicles hitting pedestrians. They actually work to help build safer vehicles on the road. They, of course, use, the crash dummies that you see on TV when they do those tests. So the women there, when they found this guy, Dr. Wolf, who, by the way, is very credible and is very educated, has a doctorate. When you kind of take Dr. Wolf and all of his scientific training, all of his education, and you kind of put him beside poor old Trooper Joe there, I think you'll see that this particular witness has a whole lot of credibility going on for him. Not only that, he must be kind of handsome because the ladies, they kind of liked him. And they coined a little word called Crash Daddy. Yep, Crash Daddy for Dr. Wolf. There were two of them with this company, this ARCA company, Dr. Wolf and Dr. Wrench. Both were not hired by the defense. They weren't hired by the prosecution. And here's what I'm saying. You really didn't expect this. They were actually hired by the FBI. The FBI, who was running a parallel investigation that included this case. They hired ARCA to come in and say, look at this accident. Is this really a case of this vehicle hitting a person, or is something else going on? Now, when he was questioned, the defense did take the time to ask the witness, did we hire you? Did we pay you? And he was pushing the thought that this was an independent inquiry. This wasn't some paid-off witness. They study things about how a body would react to a vehicle crash. They also study what kind of damage a pedestrian would cause to a vehicle. And my friend, when it comes down to it, when you ask both of these renowned scientists who use physics and engineering science, who had a PhD on top of all those qualifications, see, they just didn't attend a class in Reconstruction. He had a degree in scientific physics that was involved in this investigation. And by the way, my friend, when you look at these testimonies that covered the time and effort that they put in the reconstruction along with the experiments, it was quite impressive. You see, Wolf, he precisely focused on the damage to the vehicle. Dr. Wrench, he talked about the injuries to Officer John O'Keefe. And when it comes down to it, they both said, number one, the damage to that tail light, he said that damage, well, it was not consistent with hitting a pedestrian. The injuries to John O'Keefe, they said, was not consistent to being hit by the vehicle. And there was another possible theory that was looked by these independent investigators. And I have to smile about this because my wife and I, we were talking about this. They see, I had a hard problem. Well, how did this tail light, these portions of the taillight that they said they found near his body and the glass with the cocktail glass. How did that happen if he was not hit by the car? She said, well, what if John O'Keefe was just mad when he got out of the vehicle and he just threw that cocktail glass up against the taillight? And oh man, I thought, well, why didn't I think of that? My wife even thought of that. You see, I was somewhat upset because you old Crimebuster, I said, well, why didn't I think of that possibility? But now we know this scientific team, they thought likewise. They actually did an experiment with a wind machine that would blow out a cocktail glass at an identical taillight on a vehicle. And they said by this cocktail glass hitting this taillight, that was much more consistent to what they observed on both the vehicle and about the injuries that O'Keefe had. Why, that would explain why there were two different types of glass found about his body. Wow. I heard his team paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, this independent team by the FBI to do this study. Well, all the time, they could have just asked my wife, and they could have mailed me the check. Well, however, we do now know that the thing that really stands out is they are not presenting their views to help and support either defense or prosecution. They were neutral, and they were not hired by either, but by the FBI. Now, while I do not know if their investigation proved that he died as a result of a fight. Now, remember the other side said Trooper Joe, who said he thought it was the car. He did not quite have the credentials, the other two guys. Well, so we have the battle of the experts. One thing you have to say that a lot of this, at least in my mind, would at least prove reasonable doubt. May not prove either way, but it would prove reasonable doubt. Well, before we get out of here, we got to talk about bad cop. Yep, bad cop. Without a shadow of a doubt, there was police misconduct on the part of certain police persons. The question is, did the bad conduct prove that the police were covering up a crime? In other words, were they working with one another to keep Boston cop Brian Albert from being a suspect? After all, it was his house that John O'Keefe was found in his yard. Been known by some to be a hothead. The defense thinks that there was a fight that took place in that house and that John O'Keefe was just thrown out in the snow. And there are some moments that make you want to think about it, does it not? For instance, that next morning when that body was found on the lawn, why didn't he come out? He was a Boston police officer. He did not even come out of the house. He was not even interviewed on the day that they found him. And remember, one of the people who have actually testified in the case, an expert said that she thought that the marks on his arms was the result of dog bites. Sergeant Albert had a big dog, I think maybe like a German Shepherd. So you got to ask these questions. Why did he not come out of the house that morning when there was a dead friend in the yard? Number two, why did he get rid of his dog? Got rid of his dog right after that. Why did he get rid of his cell phone? Got rid of his cell phone right after that. Why did he sell his house? He sold it right out of that. Now, all of those are questions of concern, but that in itself is not evidence of a crime. So then we have the lead investigator, Michael Proctor. And guess what? Michael Proctor, he did indeed have a friendship with the Albert family. There were even text messages that brought up in court revealed that the lead investigator in this case of Karen Reed, well, he was friends with Brian Albert's brother, who was another cop. Even to the point that they went out drinking one night while on duty, got drunk to the place that Albert's brother texted Michael Proctor and said, oops, I think I left my badge and gun in your vehicle. That, of course, is being investigated in this police misconduct deal. But it was really brought out when Proctor had to testify whether he knew them or not in another case, and he said he did not. He lied under oath. And then there were those disgusting text messages where lead investigator Michael Proctor texts other people, including co-workers, and they were rude. They were disgusting texts. I don't even want to read them on the podcast about the very person that he was supposed to be investigating with an open mind. Boy, I tell you, listening to him read those texts, it was apparent there was some bias in his mind as he conducted this investigation. So much that, well, number one, he was suspended from duty. He has been suspended from duty. And number two, the federal government launched an investigation into possible misconduct. This was why that independent firm was brought in to look at the investigation, look at the accident, do scientific research. Now, my friend, at this point, it is my opinion there's no real proof that a cover-up took place. But the very actions of this one bad apple, who, by the way, was the lead investigator of the case, certainly does support the possibility of a cover-up. For sure, this bad cop tainted the investigation and probably was another mark toward reasonable doubt in the prosecution. But the question now, moving all that out, what does the evidence? When we get away from these personalities, when we get away from Turtleboy, Crash Daddy, and get away from Bad Cop, what will the evidence really say? Well, we now know there was a mistrial in the first trial. Some of the jury said they all agreed that, number one, she was not guilty of second-degree murder, and number two, she was not guilty of leaving the scene of an accident. What they could not agree on was she causing the death of another while intoxicated, which was a much less serious charge than the other two. However, those first two charges was not revealed to the judge that they agreed on it, so the judge just declared an overall mistrial, which means now the prosecution can come back and retry Karen Reed on all of those charges. And as of now, the prosecution plans to do just that. So if the trial, if it does come back, and we believe it will, then we can rest assured the evidence will be introduced again. So beyond the fact of Turtleboy, Crash Daddy, and the Bad Cop, what does the real evidence say? Well, my friend, we're going to tell you all about the evidence in our next podcast. We're going to be talking about the evidence that demands a verdict. So make sure you don't miss that. Hey, don't forget, we're going to talk a little more about this podcast in the middle of this coming week. It's going to be on our YouTube channel. YouTube at Charlie Crimebuster. James Buckland, our producer, and I, we're going to talk about this episode. Why don't you join us? Just go to YouTube. Well, thank you for joining us on the Charlie Crime Train today as we introduced you to Turtleboy, Crash Daddy, and Bad Cop. Till this time next week, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. Yep, for the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.